you, but I can ask some of the panel members too. What chemicals are in vapes?
What chemicals are in vapes is interesting because, again, with my group in Redfern, we actually sent off selections of these vapes that I showed you before, this one and these ones. We actually sent a whole selection off to a toxicology laboratory in Vikram in Sydney, and we found in every single one of them, 100% of them had nicotine in them in very high concentrations, something like 80 to 100 milligrams of nicotine. These are in vapes that have no marking on them. It doesn't say what's in it at all. And the kids assumed there was nothing else in it but flavorings. So the kids gave them to us, volunteered them to us. And our biggest concern is the fact that they had high doses of nicotine validated and tested for us by the laboratory. So that's our biggest concern. The doses of nicotine are incredibly high in what kids think has no nicotine in it at all.
Bandana, would you like to add anything more about the chemicals in vapes?
Yes, thanks, Mita. I think there are a lot of contaminants, particularly if these are not subjected to the standards of manufacturing. So a simple example would be heavy metal contaminants, which, as you would appreciate, are quite dangerous. So nicotine, of course, but there's a whole range of other chemicals that shouldn't be there, that are there and can be dangerous as well.
Thank you. We might just move on. Vikram's already addressed the next question, but just the questions that have been: how to tell which ones have nicotine and which don't, and how does nicotine affect adolescents? And then it goes on to how addictive is vaping, and is it more addictive than smoking? So Renee, you might want to just start on that, and then we see if anyone else would like to add.
Well, it's critical that nicotine's in this as a reinforcing substance, as Frankie mentioned. And what's really impressive, as I said, I would suggest, until proven otherwise, imagine that there would be nicotine in the vapes you find or that you see, until proven otherwise, rather than the other way round. I've seen people using them and they say, oh, it says on the label there's no nicotine in it, plus a warning about nicotine. Now, why would you have a warning if it's got no nicotine in it? So do be careful about what happens. Some basic myths are that nicotine is yellow, that it's colourless, but it is colourless and odourless, so you won't necessarily see it or smell it. And reminding yourselves that what you get when you inhale from these products is you get this shot of nicotine to the brain. It is this amazing flux that kids get, this amazing relief from it. So they're upset, they're distressed, they're nervous, or they can't concentrate. We've had kids say, I can't concentrate. I put my hand up, miss, can I go to the toilet? They go to the toilets to vape and can come back and feel that they can concentrate better, or they're more relaxed. They say this openly about what the effects are, not being aware that it may be the effect of nicotine. They think it's just getting the distraction or inhaling some lovely smelling or flavours, not being aware that the chemical might be doing that. So if they're feeling more relaxed from it, remember nicotine is a short-acting drug that wears off very quickly. It doesn't last very long, and then they'll get withdrawals from that. So we've also seen kids developing withdrawals, becoming aggressive, upset, anxious, can't concentrate, as I mentioned before, and get urges to use. Just the urge to use it itself is a symptom of withdrawal, and we've seen kids manifest that.
Thank you, Renee. And Matthew, I'm going to throw this to you. You've been a respiratory physician for a very long time. How do you tell if somebody is addicted? Matthew, you have to unmute.
Well, the first thing is that if a parent identifies a vape, they come in 300 sizes. So 300 is equivalent to a pack of Marlboro. If your child has got one of those little plastic ones, they're probably a beginner. But you can absolutely bet that if they've got one of the big metal ones, like the I Get King that I saw in a Year 10 student today, with 2,400 puffs, that's 8 packets of Marlboro, and they're going through them in 3 or 4 days, you can bet that child is very, very heavily addicted. And they'll do all the things. They'll change their habits. They'll be secretive. They'll find a way to discreetly, even more discreetly, have their dose. They say they'll be irritable, they'll sleep poorly. At high levels of nicotine dependence, their educational achievements will start to tail off. All these things are adverse psychological effects in vulnerable people during a vulnerable period of their life.
Thank you. And Vikram, this is the same problem in Melbourne. You know, we are hearing all of this in New South Wales. And when you're seeing young people in your clinic, do you see any signs of addiction? What are the signs of addiction you see?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same issue is in inner city Melbourne as it is in Sydney as well. I've worked in a substance use clinic in Sydney and a respiratory clinic in Melbourne, and the same symptoms and signs that Matthew's described. A lot of kids present with change in their mood, often if they've got underlying anxiety or other mood disorders. There's those who have addiction often have higher cravings. They'll always be, seeking those vapes, or feeling quite anxious if they don't have access to it. So absolutely, and I think parents and other caregivers certainly recognise that, and that's why they come, and that's why they're referred. But absolutely a problem in Melbourne as well.